What you are about to see today was found in different corners of the Earth, in deserts, under cities, and in the ice of Antarctica. The discoveries have been documented, but they are inconvenient for official science. Hello, my friend. You're on the Kurtu channel, and these are 100 archaeological discoveries that scientists prefer to ignore. The mysterious petroglyphs of Dighton Rock. On the bank of the Taunton River in Massachusetts, there is a small museum with a single but very unusual exhibit, a 40-ton boulder. It was extracted from the water and installed here in 1963. This stone, known as the Dighton Rock, has long puzzled researchers with its mysterious inscriptions, the origin of which has remained a mystery for several centuries. The rock is about 1.5 meters high, 3.5 meters long, and 3 meters wide. Its surface is covered with petroglyphs, and it was tilted toward the water, probably serving as a kind of message for sailors. The symbols engraved on the stone consist of straight lines, geometric shapes, primitive depictions of people, and strange writings. The first written mention of the Dighton Rock dates back to 1680. The English colonist John Danford drew the symbols, and 10 years later Reverend Cotton Mather described them in his book, calling them strange signs left by unknown ancient peoples. The rock gave rise to many hypotheses. In 1837, the Danish explorer Carl Christian Raff claimed that the inscriptions were made by Vikings and were connected to the journey of Thorfinn Karlsefni, who, according to Scandinavian sagas, reached the shores of North America in the 11th century. His theory caused a sensation, but in 1916, Professor Edmund Delabar from Brown University proved that Raff had forged the image by drawing in lines that supported his hypothesis. Delabar himself proposed a new version. He saw the name Miguel Carterial and the date 1511 in the inscriptions. In his opinion, this message was left by a Portuguese explorer. Missing in America in 1502, Carterial set out to search for his brother who had been lost off the coast of Newfoundland, but he himself disappeared. He may have been forced to stay with the Indians, and 9 years later he carved a message about his fate on the rock. Delabar's theory found support in Portugal, but it was received with caution in the rest of the world. Some believed that the authors of the inscription were ancient Phoenicians, while others say it was the Chinese who reached America long before Columbus. Despite centuries of research, the Dighton Rock remains one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in the United States, continuing to inspire researchers to search for its true history. A skull with a metal plate, 2,000 years ago, somewhere in pre-Hispanic Peru, a man received a blow to the head. We don't know what caused it. Maybe a stone, maybe a club with a metal tip, maybe in battle, maybe in a ritual duel. But the skull fracture was so severe that without intervention, he would have died. That's a medical fact which can be determined directly from the bone. And then someone took a piece of metal, most likely from a household item, a bowl, a fastener, some fragment that happened to be the right size and shape. It was worked into shape to fit the fracture and implanted directly into the skull bone. This skull is now kept at the Museum of Osteology in Oklahoma. It's about 2,000 years old, and it's one of the most inconvenient exhibits for people who think that ancient people were primitive. He survived. This isn't a guess, it's written in the bone. Literally, around the metal plate, regeneration began, and bone tissue started to grow around the implant. For the body to accept it and fuse with it takes months. So the person lived long enough after the surgery for his body to adapt to the piece of metal in his skull. Think about what this means in practice. Someone 2,000 years ago understood that you need to stop the bleeding, close the wound, and fix the bone. And they understood it well enough to do it with metal and not kill the patient. From infection, blood loss, or shock from pain, anesthesia was most likely coca. Sterile practices were known in Peru. Some form of wound treatment, and this is definitely neurosurgery. And in the 1st century AD, without hospitals, without education, without textbooks. By the way, the exact composition of the metal is still unknown. The museum representatives admit this. Research is ongoing. It might be copper, it might be an alloy, but even without knowing the composition, we know one thing. The main thing is that it worked. Now, the second feature of this skull is its elongated shape. It was intentionally stretched, not from disease or anomaly, but as a tradition. In pre-Hispanic Peru, the elite of society could literally be identified by the shape of their heads. From birth, children's heads were tightly bound with special boards, and the skull gradually took on an elongated shape. It was a status symbol that couldn't be faked. It was formed over years, starting from early childhood. This means that our warrior with metal in his head was a person from the upper class, which adds another layer to the story of the elite. It means he had access. That's exactly why he survived, while an ordinary soldier with the same fracture would have simply died. Frenes 2,000 years ago worked on the same principles as it does today. If you have money connections, your chances are better. On time, on time, on time, on time, on time. Child generator. If the patient was dying on the 4th day of treatment, a doctor could be executed not for sloppy work, not for drinking on the job, but for deviating from the instructions. This is how it worked. For the first 3 days, the doctor could do anything. Experiment, try things, improvise. The state did not interfere. But from the 4th day, he was required to strictly follow the book, the official medical protocol. Every step was prescribed, every remedy specified. If he deviated and the patient died, it was a verdict. If he followed protocol and the patient died, he was forgiven. The book mattered more than results. It sounds crazy, but wait. One British medical historian read this in the papyrus, and at first wrote in his book, a barbaric system that killed patients for the sake of following ritual. Then his colleagues explained to him that he misunderstood. He removed that paragraph from the next edition, quietly, without explanation, because in reality the Egyptians did something ingenious. They divided medicine into 2 phases. The first 3 days were experimental treatment. The doctor tries, searches, takes risks. From the 4th day onward, it's standard, a proven protocol that worked on thousands of patients before you. This is the distinction between clinical trials and standard treatment, a concept that modern medicine officially established only in the 20th century. Only after several high-profile disasters with untested drugs killed thousands of people. Egypt wrote this down on Papyrus 3,500 years before that. And one more detail. In this same Edwin Smith papyrus, the surgical treatise describes 48 cases of injuries with such precision that modern neurosurgeons use it as a historical source. Not as a curiosity, but as a source. For example, the description of the connection between a neck injury and paralysis of the arms. It mentions the concept of meninges. It even has the diagnosis incurable. The Egyptian doctor honestly wrote when he couldn't help. Imagine a surgeon who tells the patient the truth. In 1500 BC. Do you think that's a coincidence? Or did they have a system that we still don't fully understand? Write in the comments. I'm really interested in what you think. There was life on Mars. There is evidence. In the 1980s, the CIA conducted experiments with people who had extrasensory abilities. Among them was Joe McMoneagle, known as Remote Viewer Number 1. He shared his memories on the podcast American Alchemy, talking about secret projects and unusual visions. One day, he was given coordinates and asked to describe what he saw. McMoneagle spoke about a giant pyramid, larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, with huge halls inside. There were beings there that looked like ice, much taller. They were trapped, surrounded by a hostile atmosphere, and they were slowly dying. Then the instructor showed a white card with the inscription, Mars 1 million BC. Later, McMoneagle visited the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory to study the negatives of the photographs. He found strange structures and bones on them. In his opinion, there was once a civilization on Mars, but a huge cosmic object deprived the planet of its atmosphere, leading it to destruction. McMoneagle also took part in the CIA's Star Wars project, where psychics were trained to penetrate the minds of enemies. In 2017, a document about the study of Mars was declassified, where his visions were described in detail. The report specified the exact coordinates of 40.89 degrees north latitude and 9.55 degrees west longitude. McMoneagle saw Martians in unusual clothing, a raging storm, and giant pyramids that were used as shelters. He described the room inside the pyramid as minimalist, intended for sleeping or hibernation. The Martians were waiting for help, but no rescue came. The psychic was sure he was describing Earth. When he found out it was Mars, he got angry because he couldn't verify the truth of his visions. McMoneagle demanded NASA release images of the coordinates he received. The images did show a strange structure beside the crater. He claimed that if the pyramid had existed before the impact, it would have been destroyed by the collision. Moreover, according to him, when NASA first detected this structure, it was emitting a red glow. Although such experiments remain controversial, the fact that they were conducted is confirmed by official documents. The mystery of the ancient civilization on Mars remains unsolved. The forgotten treasure of Jiroft. The story of this discovery began in an incredibly dramatic way. In 2001, after heavy torrential rains in Kerman province, the Halil River overflowed its banks. When the water receded, the local residents discovered that the ground was literally strewn with strange objects made of dark green stone. It was chlorite, a material that was valued as highly as gold in ancient times. That's when a real gold rush began. Thousands took to the fields with shovels, and soon a stunning artifact flooded the global black market. Archaeologists realized it too late when thousands of tombs had already been looted. But what was saved forever changed our understanding of human history. Scientists discovered the remains of a huge metropolis, which they called the Jiroft culture. The most shocking thing is the age of the artifacts found. It turned out that these civilizations flourished 5,000 years ago, at the same time as Great Sumer, and possibly even earlier. On the vessels of Jiroft, entire battle scenes are carved, showing giant snakes fighting scorpions, mythical creatures with human bodies, and bullheads and soaring eagles. The technique used to create these works baffles researchers. Jiroft craftsmen inlaid soft chlorite with turquoise and lapis lazuli so precisely that gaps between the stones are invisible without a microscope. How could ancient people work stone with such jeweler's precision without modern machines? Many researchers are convinced that Jiroft is the very legendary land of Arada, which the Sumerians praised in their hymns as a place of extraordinary skill and wealth. If that's the case, then the cradle of civilization is not between the rivers, but here in the scorched sands of Iran. But the most mysterious thing is the tablets with unknown writing found in Jiroft. If they can be deciphered, the entire official history of the ancient world will be completely rewritten. Miniature figurines from the past. The golden ram and the stone lion were found in a tomb at the Gunur Tepe archaeological site in Turkmenistan. Their age is impressive. They date back to between 2400 and 1600 BC. Gunur Tepe is considered the heart of the mysterious Margiana civilization, which flourished in Central Asia and left behind many artifacts. The size of the figurines is astonishing. They literally fit on the tip of a finger, which speaks to the incredible skill of ancient jewelers. The golden ram symbolized wealth and abundance, while the stone lion represented strength and power. They were probably part of the grave goods, meant to accompany the deceased in the afterlife and serve as amulets. Such finds confirm the high level of craftsmanship and the developed culture of Margiana. The craftsmen of that time were skilled not only in working with gold, but also with semi-precious stones, creating unique items. Today, the figurines are valuable artifacts that lift the veil of mystery over a vanished civilization. 3. The tropical forests of Antarctica. The Prince Charles Mountains in East Antarctica are the largest geological archive on the planet. It was here, among the sheer cliffs of McRobertson Land, that scientists found physical evidence that the current state of the continent is an anomaly. In the layers of sedimentary rock, geologists discovered fossilized forests preserved in perfect condition. We're talking about plants of the genus Glossopteris, which dominated here about 260 million years ago, during the Permian period. The trees reached 30 meters in height and formed dense forests in conditions that seem impossible today. A group of researchers led by Eric Gulbranson from the University of Wisconsin conducted a detailed analysis of these findings. It turned out that the wood preserved its cellular structure to such an extent that traces of ancient fungi and microorganisms were found in it, literally frozen in time. The tissue was so well preserved that scientists were able to extract a fragment of amino acids from the cells, which are over 1 billion years old. Such a degree of organic preservation is only possible with extremely rapid burial of biomass. In geology, such cases are associated with events of instantaneous replacement, when volcanic ash or powerful sediment flows block oxygen access even before the decomposition processes begin. This turns the Prince Charles Mountains into a giant time capsule. The discovered trunk segments preserved annual rings, which show that the trees grew at an incredible rate using the round-the-clock daylight of the polar summer, and then abruptly transitioned into a state of dormancy. An additional fact is the colossal coal deposits found in this same region. Coal is concentrated biomass that forms only from 1 million tons of undecayed plants. The presence of coal seams in central Antarctica confirms that the continent was once the planet's biological reactor. The scale of these discoveries indicates that the freezing of the continent was not the result of a gradual climate decline, but a sudden end to life, traces of which now have to be extracted from stone at extremely low temperatures. The ancient Sweet Track is a wooden walkway built about 5,830 years ago in England and discovered in 1970 by archaeologist Ray Sweet, after whom it was named. This is one of the oldest known examples of ancient human engineering skill. The walkway stretched for 1.8 kilometers across the marsh and consisted of wooden planks laid on crossbeams, which allowed people to safely cross the boggy areas. The accuracy of the dating was achieved thanks to dendrochronological analysis of the wood, which showed that all the trees for the decking were cut down at about the same time. Interestingly, the walkway was used for only about 10 years before it was abandoned, probably due to rising water levels. Artifacts found along the path confirmed that it was actively used. The Sweet Track shows that even in the Neolithic era, people knew how to build complex structures and plan their use. Interestingly, similar bridge building technologies were preserved in the English countryside until recent centuries, which highlights the practicality and durability of ancient engineering solutions. Worth its weight in gold. Recently, Mexican scientists invested 9.5 million pesos in acquiring 3 unique documents from the late 16th century. This investment opened a new chapter in history, providing valuable information about the period when the Spanish arrived in the lands of modern-day Mexico. We are talking about the codices of San Andrés, Teteroro, and Tepilco, compiled at the turn of the 16th and 17th centuries, which vividly illustrate the events of that time, including the reign of Itzcoatl, the 4th ruler of Tenochtitlan and founder of the Aztec Empire, and the arrival of Hernán Cortés. These rare codices were purchased for the National Library of Anthropology and History thanks to the efforts and support of private individuals and organizations. A payment of 9.5 million pesos made it possible to return them from private hands to public ownership. Analysis showed that the codices were made from amate, a traditional bark paper, using natural dyes, which highlights the high craftsmanship of their creators. It was possible to confirm the authenticity of the documents thanks to joint work with experts from various scientific institutions. The San Andrés Teteroro codices stand out among other artifacts due to their unique combination of indigenous traditions and European influence. They contain texts in the Nahuatl and Spanish languages written in the Latin alphabet. This treasure provides an opportunity to delve deeper into the study and understanding of a key period in the region's history. The largest log house in the world, at the turn of the 20th century, Portland, Oregon, was a thriving economic center. The city was known for its flour milling, timber industries, and its deep water port at the Willamette and Columbia Rivers confluence, making Portland a key transportation hub. However, the long depression of the late 19th century dealt a serious blow to the region's economy. To attract investment and revive business activity, the Lewis and Clark Centennial Exposition was organized in 1905. This grand fair lasted for 4 months and attracted 1.6 million visitors from 21 countries. Dozens of buildings with domes and arches towered over the exposition, including the luxurious pavilions of Italy, France, and Germany. However, most of the buildings were temporary, constructed from plaster on wooden frames. The exception was the Forestry Building, considered the largest. This massive structure, 62 meters long and 22 meters high, was built from solid logs brought from the forests of Columbia County. Inside, there were colonnades made of 54 rough-hewn trunks supporting a 2-story nave. The building's exhibition included animal taxidermy, Native American artifacts, and displays telling about the rich, natural resources of Oregon. After the exhibition ended, the forestry building was purchased by the city and stood abandoned for many years. In 1914, it was nearly destroyed by a fire, but the building survived. However, in 1964, a powerful fire finally turned it into ruins. Columns of fire as tall as a 10-story building lit up the sky for many kilometers, shattering windows in nearby buildings, and ash spread throughout the city. To make up for the loss, the Western Institute of Forestry was established, and in 1791, a new building opened in Washington Park. In 1986, it was renamed the World Forestry Center to emphasize the importance of this field for the entire world. This way, Portland secured its status as the forestry capital of the United States. The Sphinx was not built by humans. A recent discovery by a group of scientists from New York University radically changes our perception of the history of the Great Sphinx in Giza. Unlike the commonly accepted opinion that this monument was carved by the ancient Egyptians, the new theory claims that the Sphinx is the result of natural forces. The researchers drew attention to yardangs, natural sculptures formed by erosion in desert conditions, which resemble the outlines of animals or people. Such formations are typical for archaeological zones with a similar climate, including the territory of Egypt. During experiments simulating erosion in laboratory conditions, scientists proved that when wind and water act on soft rock, figures can form that strikingly resemble the Sphinx. So, it is possible that the ancient Egyptians simply polished or enhanced an already existing natural form, giving it more distinct features. This research opens a new chapter in understanding the process of forming archaeological monuments and the role of nature in the art of antiquity. The burial of people with the remains of an ancient feast. Archaeologists in Wales have discovered a unique early medieval cemetery near the airport, where burials of women in curled-up positions dating to around 500 AD were found. The bodies were oriented facing south, which indicates specific burial rituals. Along with the human remains, fragments of worked animal bones and pieces of expensive imported glass vessels were found, indicating that the site was used not only for burials, but also for ritual feasting. On the grounds of Fonmont Castle, where the cemetery is located, there may be about 80 burials. Of these, 18 have been studied, 4 of which were found in unusual positions. Archaeologists note that the discovery of many bodies buried on their sides in a curled-up position facing south suggests the possibility of a specific burial ritual being performed. Interestingly, all such burials belong to women. The fragments of glass vessels that were found came from Western France. Traces of butchering and cooking were found on the animal bones, which supports the hypothesis of a ritual nature of the feasts, possibly held in honor of the deceased. A sign of wealth from the 16th century. This ring is an amazing example of the craftsmanship of German jewelers from the 16th century. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary piece of jewelry with elegant engraving. But once you open it, the ring transforms into an astronomical sphere. Such rings were often called astrolabes. They consisted of several fixed bands that symbolized the celestial spheres. They could be used to demonstrate the movement of stars and planets, although more often it was simply an intricate ornament that showed the owner's status. The engravings on the bands carried both scientific and symbolic meaning. Such rings were often given as a sign of love or friendship, hinting at an unbreakable bond similar to the interdependent celestial bodies. In addition, it was also a kind of talisman that protected its owner. Owning such a ring in the 16th century was a sign not only of wealth, but also of an interest in science and philosophy. Today, such artifacts are rare and are kept in museums, reminding us of a time when art and science were inseparable. A stone with a human face. In 1872, a mysterious artifact was discovered, which remains unknown to this day. And when Sean Collet from Meredith decided to fence off her property, the workers found a strange object in the clay. This stone, made of dark quartzite and shaped like an egg, is decorated with an image of a human face and symbols such as a wigwam and arrows. Many assumed that the object was created by Native Americans. In 1931, a theory emerged that it might be a Celtic thunderstone, a mythical object that supposedly falls from the sky. In the past, such stones found on the ground were considered signs from the gods or the elements. Now the artifact is in a museum where visitors can examine it in person. However, its true history and purpose remain unknown to this day. What do you think is the real story behind this object? Dularka Railway Tunnel Deep. In Australia's Dularka National Park, there is an old railway tunnel that has long been abandoned. Built in 1891, it once served as part of a route passing through dense forests. The tall concrete arch allowed trains full of passengers to pass through. But in 1932, the tracks were relocated and the tunnel was left empty. Since then, the tunnel has become a creepy attraction. Legends about a ghost train that supposedly rushes along the abandoned tracks scare tourists and attract thrill seekers. In reality, the tunnel is inhabited only by a small colony of bats hiding in the cracks and crevices of the concrete walls. A trail was made for tourists so they could explore the old structure and see these nocturnal inhabitants with their own eyes. As for the ghost train, it all depends on your imagination and luck. An unusual soldier's burial. In Spain, archaeologists made a sensational discovery. During excavations at the site of an ancient fortress in Almendralejo, a burial was found that likely belonged to a Roman soldier. The remains were discovered in a solitary grave located next to the fortress's defensive ditch. Its age is about 4,900 years. The man was apparently a soldier of the Roman Empire. His age is estimated at 2,535 years. The burial is unusual. The soldier was laid face down, and a Roman dagger, pugio, was found on his back, which was completely preserved in its sheath. The pugio is dated to the end of the 1st century BC and helps establish the chronology of the burial. The uniqueness of the burial lies in the fact that the pugio was deliberately placed on the back of the deceased, which could have symbolized his burial, belonging to the army, as well as low social status or the disgraceful nature of the burial. It is important to note that such a practice was rare for that time. The soldier's skeleton was almost intact, except for the severed legs. The cause of death, as well as the strange position of the body and the severed limbs, remain a mystery to archaeologists. Archaeologists also found traces of fire and numerous arrows, which indicates the violent destruction of the settlement. Interestingly, the excavations also led to the discovery of a large number of artifacts, such as axes, arrows, parts of looms, and grinding stones. Processed obsidian at a depth of 1 kilometer. If the metal wire from the 1960s still leaves room for discussion about space debris, then the 2025 discovery in the Transantarctic Mountains hits the mark exactly. During deep drilling at just over 1,000 meters, a fragment of black volcanic glass, obsidian, was extracted from the ice sheet. However, this was not just a piece of rock. After cleaning the sample in sterile laboratory conditions, scientists discovered traces on its surface that cannot be attributed to natural processes. The surface of the stone showed signs of deep mechanical polishing and microscopic notches running at a strictly defined angle. Such processing is characteristic of cutting tools, but not of a random rock fragment. The problem for official science lies in 2 facts. First, there are no obsidian outcrops within hundreds of kilometers of the drilling site. Someone intentionally brought the stone there. Second, the layer of ice in which it was found has been forming for 200,000 years. According to the accepted chronology, during this period, the ancestors of modern humans had only just begun to master the simplest stone tools in Africa. There could be no question of any human presence in Antarctica, let alone technologies for fine stone polishing. Geologists tried to explain the find as natural chipping under the pressure of a glacier, but microscopic analysis showed no chaotic cracks. On the contrary, the notches had the same depth and spacing, which is characteristic of manual or machine work. This polished obsidian is an inconvenient artifact. It proves that 200,000 years ago, when the continent was already partially covered with ice, someone was here who was capable of working hard rocks at a level comparable to the late Neolithic or even higher. Once again, the ice acted as a time capsule, preserving an object that directly points to the existence of intelligent activity in Antarctica long before the first civilizations known to us appeared. Amethyst grapes. Before us is an amazing work by Chinese craftsmen from the Qin Dynasty era. A bunch of grapes made from amethyst and nephrite. This is not just a decoration, but a symbol of wealth and abundance, which was often used as a gift, bringing luck and prosperity. In China, grapes were associated with long life and family happiness, and the use of amethyst emphasized spiritual purity and protection from evil forces. The berries are made of amethyst with incredible detail. Each stone is carefully polished, looking like the real thing. The leaves, carved from jade, add realism and harmony to the composition. Such pieces often decorated the palaces and homes of wealthy Chinese families, showcasing their status and refined taste. The art of stone carving in China reached incredible heights, and this bunch of grapes is an excellent example of craftsmanship that combines traditional symbols and jewelry art. Today, such artifacts are kept in museums and are considered national treasures. The Altai mummy comes from the Pazyryk kurgans in the Altai, where the ice preserved it.
Исчезнувшие татуировки. Их изучили заново.
Among them is the Chinese one, which is a main part of the Chinese mummy. In China, they recreated the pigment and techniques on models. Something unexpected was discovered. The tattoo was done by more than one hand. On the right hand, there are deer and big cats, drawn with the finest lines and correct anatomy. This is the work of an experienced master. On the left hand, the work appears to be that of an apprentice. This is the first convincing case where several artists are identified on one body. The pigment is ordinary soot. The tools are a single needle for outlining and a comb, several needles on a bar. They're used for quickly making dots and shading. Such a combination explains the depth and texture of the lines under a microscope. The incisions made during mummification sometimes cut through the designs. This means they weren't preserved for ritual purposes. Tattoos were part of everyday life, marking status or group identity. From the skin, you can read the structure of an Iron Age community. There are masters, there are apprentices, and there are simply complex body ornaments that were important during life. They remained after death, the bronzes of the mysterious lures. We are heading into the harsh, hard-to-reach Zagros Mountains. For almost 100 years, objects have been found here that make scientists question the official chronology of technological development. This is the famous Luristan bronze, but behind the dry scientific name lies something truly frightening and inexplicable. Imagine elegant figurines that look like characters from the darkest fantasies or dreams. The main symbol of this culture, the so-called Master of Animals, is a human figure holding in its hands two fantastic creatures that resemble griffins or demons. But the strangest thing is that the faces of these creatures often blend into human ones, and their limbs turn into snakes or the claws of predatory birds. This is surrealism created 3,000 years before the word even appeared in our language. The level of detail in these objects is simply astonishing. The masters of Luristan used the lost wax casting method, which allows for the finest details to be captured, right down to the expression in the eyes of these mythical creatures. But this is where the main mystery begins. According to official history, the people who created these masterpieces were nomads. They didn't have permanent cities, large workshops, or stationary furnaces. How could a people who were constantly on the move establish such a complex and high-tech production of metal items and bronze smelting? You need temperatures above 1,000 degrees in stable conditions, which is almost impossible in a nomadic lifestyle, especially in the mountains. Some researchers suggest that the lures possess secret mobile forges, the designs of which have been irretrievably lost. Others see these figures not just as decorations, but as cult objects that were used to communicate with another world. These bronze artifacts are found exclusively in graves. They accompanied their owners on their final journey, and each item was unique. There was no mass production here. Each figurine is individual and carries some kind of hidden code. Looking at these intertwined bodies of humans and monsters, it's hard to shake the thought that the ancient inhabitants of the Zagros Mountains saw the world very differently from us. They lived surrounded by gods and demons, whose images they captured in eternal metal, with craftsmanship that baffles even modern foundry workers. These discoveries turn the mountains of Iran into a giant cemetery of forgotten craftsmen, whose secrets are still securely guarded by cold bronze. At Gripsholm Castle, taxidermy is not just stuffing animal skins, but an art that requires deep knowledge of anatomy. If the craftsman makes a mistake, the result can turn out to be ridiculous or even grotesque. That's exactly what happened to the infamous Gripsholm lion, a stuffed animal that became one of the museum's most significant relics. This lion most likely arrived in Sweden in 1731 as a gift to King Frederick I from the Bay of Algiers. As a sign of the treaty for the protection of Swedish ships along the Barbary coast, the ruler of Algiers presented the king with an exotic animal. After the lion's death, its remains were given to a taxidermist who unfortunately had no idea what this animal actually looked like. Lions were rare in Europe, and the taxidermist probably relied on a heraldic image, possibly even on the carved lion in Gripsholm Castle itself. This explains the animal's strange pose, the protruding tongue, and the unnatural expression on its face. When viewed from the side, the lion looks impressive from the side, but from the front, it's clear something went wrong. The overly round head, bulging eyes, and comically stretched mouth made it a world-famous meme. The irony is that this awkward lion became the museum's most popular exhibit. If the craftsman had done a better job, no one would be talking about it. The golden helmet that was buried for the gods, April 7, 1976, Galicia, northwestern Spain, the village of Lero. Jose Maria Vicente is digging the ground for a shed. His shovel hits something hard. He thinks it's a stone. He pulls it out. It shines. A neighbor was passing by and saw the golden gleam. The rumor spread around the area before Vicente even realized what he had found: the Lero golden helmet. That's what this object is called now, the Bronze Age. Around 1800 BC, weight 270 grams, thin with detailed engraving all over its surface. It's called a helmet, but it was physically impossible to wear it in battle. The metal is too thin. Any blow, and that's it. It was a ceremonial item, ritualistic, made not for protecting the body, but for something else. The proof is in how it was found. The helmet was inside a ceramic vessel, carefully packed, deliberately buried. This wasn't a loss. It was a sacrifice, a gift to the gods or spirits who have been gone from our world for 3,000 years. It seems similar items were found in Ireland and Britain. This means that there was a unified symbolic tradition along the entire Atlantic coast. People who had never met in their lives made the same ritual objects and buried them in the same way, a common language without words. Vicente didn't sell or melt down the find. He turned it over to authorities and got a small, inadequate compensation. The helmet remained in Spain, was placed in a museum, and became a regional symbol. A time capsule was also recently buried at the discovery site. 3,000 years ago, gold was buried in the ground for the gods. Today, a message is buried in the ground for descendants. The same gesture after 3,000 years. Traces of cities. Hominids, 350,000 years old. In the Italian province of Caserta, near the extinct volcano Roccamonfina, there is a mysterious place called Ciampate del Diavolo, or the Devil's Footprints. On the solidified lava, ancient footprints can be seen, which the locals believe are proof of the presence of demons. After all, in their opinion, only evil forces could walk on the scorching surface. However, in 2003, archaeologists led by Professor Paolo Mietto from the University of Padua proved that these are footprints. The footprints of Homo heidelbergensis, ancient ancestors of Neanderthals and sapiens, who lived 350,000 years ago. They belong to a group of 3 people who were descending a steep slope of still warm lava, probably escaping from an eruption. The first set of footprints forms a Z-shaped route, indicating careful movement. The second section is winding, with clear signs of slipping. The third path is more direct. Next to it, there are animal tracks visible, possibly from a wolf or a large dog. In some areas, handprints can be seen, left behind during a fall. Scientists counted 56 footprints, about 20 centimeters in size, which corresponds to a size 36 shoe. According to their estimates, these people were about 1.55 meters tall. The footprints were preserved thanks to volcanic ash and were later uncovered by erosion. These prints are among the oldest found outside of Africa. Their value comes not just from age, but from their exceptional level of detail. While hominid footprints are usually on flat surfaces, these show movement, haste, and struggle with the terrain. This site is now a regional point of pride and a unique testament to ancient human life. The abyss of the Denman Glacier. The Denman Glacier in East Antarctica hides the deepest point on the land surface of our planet. Research conducted in 2026 using next-generation radars confirmed that beneath this ice stream lies a canyon reaching a depth of 3,500 meters below sea level. For comparison, this is almost 10 times deeper than the shores of the Dead Sea. But what attracted scientists' attention was not so much the scale of the depression as the abnormal thermal readings at its bottom. Seismic sensors recorded stable vibrations at the base of the canyon and water temperature that is 4 degrees higher than at the surface. This indicates the presence of a powerful influx of geothermal energy or a hidden circulation system that supports life in complete isolation. In the same year, deep-sea probes transmitted data about the presence of complex organic matter in this trench, whose genetic profile differs by 30% from all known marine species. Today, the Denman Abyss is called a time capsule, where, due to the colossal pressure and specific water chemistry, evolution could have taken a completely different path. The fact that the bottom of this canyon is only a few hundred kilometers from the South Magnetic Pole makes it an ideal place to search for artifacts that could have been preserved in their original form for millions of years. The Holy Dollar. One of the rarest coins is the Holy Dollar. It mysteriously disappeared from the museum in Torun, Poland, along with 400 other numismatic exhibits. It was later discovered that it had been at 2 auctions in Germany and then ended up in Australia. The coin was made from a Spanish silver dollar from 1777 minted in Mexico during the reign of Charles III. In 1914, it was purchased by the Polish collector Walery Ambrogowicz at an auction in Amsterdam. Before his death in 1931, he donated it to the Scientific Society of Torun, and then it ended up in the museum in Krakow. Between 2011 and 2018, hundreds of numismatic valuables were stolen from the museum, including this unique specimen. The search was conducted through international efforts. Eventually, the coin surfaced at an auction in Melbourne, where it was bought by a collector from Perth for €319,000. The Australian police, together with the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, and the Arts, conducted an investigation and identified the last owner. As a result, the relic was confiscated. Russian pyramids. If you haven't seen them in person, you've surely heard about the grandeur of the Egyptian pyramids on the Giza Plateau. This architectural ensemble, which has amazed the world with its magnificence for centuries, is considered one of the most monumental. But Russian researchers have proposed an alternative, pointing to the existence of even older pyramids in Russia, covering areas from the Kola Peninsula to the Black Sea. The first discovery of such pyramid-like structures took place on the Kola Peninsula in 2001, and their dating indicated an age twice that of their Egyptian counterparts. Subsequent findings confirmed the artificial origin of these pyramids, which were built between 9,000 and 40,000 years ago. In 2010, researchers discovered another ancient pyramid, noting the similarity of construction techniques to those used in Egyptian and Chinese structures. In the Krasnoyarsk region, there is Mount Chernaya, an extinct volcano known as the Pyramid, because of its 3-sided shape with man-made masonry discovered in 1993. In Rostov-on-Don, there is the Arya Sanctuary, a unique structure that predates the Egyptian pyramids by 1,000 years and was built according to the Golden Ratio principle. Crimea is especially rich in such finds. In 2001, 7 pyramids were found lined up between Sevastopol and Foros, supposedly 2,000 years older than the Egyptian ones. Their architecture resembles the Tibetan and Mexican pyramids, indicating the existence of an ancient advanced civilization. It's hard to believe that the Egyptian pyramids aren't as ancient as we were told before. Such findings also confirm that the Egyptians were not the first to create such grand structures. To this day, humanity is still puzzled and trying to understand why people in ancient times built pyramid structures all over the globe. In the Khaybar Oasis in the desert of Saudi Arabia, scientists discovered an ancient fortress wall dating back more than 4,000 years. This gigantic structure is 14.5 kilometers long and 5 meters high, with about 180 bastions, of which only 6 kilometers of the wall and 74 bastions have survived to this day. Radiocarbon analysis of charcoal remains from the excavation site indicates a period between 2,250 and 1,950 BC. Pottery remains have been found on the wall, which confirms its ancient origin. Archaeologists believe that this wall was used for several centuries before it was abandoned. The wall was presumably used for protection against nomadic raids, marking territorial boundaries and flood defense. This indicates a transition of the local population to a sedentary lifestyle. The construction of such a gigantic wall required significant resources. About 250 people worked on it for 4 years, using 164,000 cubic meters of stone bricks. The discovery of the wall was made possible thanks to satellite images, which opens up new horizons for archaeological research. 8 secret rooms in the pyramid. Specialists from Julius Maximilian University of Würzburg, while working on the restoration of the Sahura pyramid, discovered 8 previously unexplored rooms. This pyramid, built about 4,400 years ago, is the tomb of the Egyptian pharaoh Sahura from the 5th dynasty. Although the site was studied in the 19th and 20th centuries, current work has led to new discoveries. The main task of the researcher was to reinforce the foundation of the pyramid to prevent its further destruction. Thanks to 3D laser scanning technology, detailed plans of the pyramid were created, including its internal chambers. As a result of the research, a secret corridor leading to previously unexplored rooms was discovered. The condition of these rooms raises a number of questions, including questions about their original contents. After the discovery of the new rooms, restoration work began. Scientists intend to continue studying the pyramid in search of further discoveries. They believe that future findings may revise our understanding of the history and architecture of the pyramids. America was discovered 7,000 years earlier. The authors of a new study from the University of Bournemouth in the United Kingdom have presented evidence indicating that the first people settled in North America not 14,000, but at least 23,000 years ago. This date was determined based on the analysis of ancient human footprints and fossilized plants. Until recently, it was believed that humans appeared on the continent through a corridor formed by melting ice 14,000 years ago. Scientists claim that in the early 21st century, hypotheses about an earlier settlement of the continent emerged. The radiocarbon analysis of seeds found near human footprints was criticized. It was argued that the seeds could have absorbed old salty water, which would have distorted the dating results. To refute this theory, researchers used flow cytometry, a method usually applied to analyze human cells. This method allowed scientists to isolate and study individual particles of plant material. The second method, optically stimulated luminescence, also confirmed the age of the traces, based on dating grains of ancient plants. Thus, the new analytical methods confirmed the previous conclusions of scientists, indicating that the history of the first inhabitants of North America needs to be reconsidered. The mysterious mechanism from Peru. You probably think that the history of ancient Peru is only about megaliths and mysterious lines in the desert. But what was discovered recently in the highlands of the Andes literally made scientists hold their breath. In a sealed stone box at a depth corresponding to 1500 BC, there was an object, X11. It's a perfectly round bronze object, inside of which something impossible is hidden. Through the slots in the metal, you can see gears and shafts, and the casing is inlaid with quartz crystals that are fitted with micron-level precision. For that era, technology like this is like finding a modern wristwatch in Tutankhamun's tomb. Officially, such technologies appeared among humans only 3,000 years later. The scariest discovery during the X-ray examination was that the mechanism inside remains untouched by corrosion and seems alive. Now, engineers are preparing the experiment of the decade. They are going to try very carefully to turn the main gear in a vacuum chamber. Scientists hope that the mechanism will speak again in the language of mechanics and reveal why this impossible device was created in the mountains 3,500 years ago. The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity, Abruzzo, central Italy, about 100 kilometers from Rome. In the mountains, there is a round lake called Sirente, about 140 meters in diameter. Geologists believe that this is a crater formed by a meteorite impact. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the ejecta gives a date of around 312 AD. This is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. The Swedish researcher Jens Ormu proposed a simple explanation. A bright fireball and a mushroom-shaped dust cloud could have looked like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea describes a vision of the cross and light, after which Constantine ordered the symbol to be placed on the shields and won. Calculations show an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash could be seen from very far away. There is indirect archaeological evidence nearby. A village abandoned in the 4th century mass burials in catacombs. Local legends about a sun star that split oaks. There is no direct evidence linking the meteorite to Constantine's vision. It's a hypothesis, but the coincidence of dates, scale, and visibility makes it one of the most convincing. A natural event may have prompted the decision to legalize Christianity across the Roman Empire. A cocktail of hallucinogens and human blood. Analysis of an ancient vessel dated to around the 2nd century BC revealed traces of an unusual cocktail consisting of various hallucinogenic plants, alcohol, honey, and human bodily fluids. Scientists believe that this strong drink was used in religious rituals dedicated to the deity Bes, a figure resembling a combination of a dwarf and a cat, who was attributed with protective qualities in ancient Egypt. The unique feature of the vessel is its design. It is made in the shape of Bes's head. Scientists suggest that because of the protective significance of the figure of Bes, a drink from such a vessel could have been considered medicinal. Analyses of organic substances in the vessel kept at the Tampa Museum of Art showed the presence of the plant Paganum harmala and the water lily Nymphea caerulea. In addition, the drink contained alcohol made from fermented fruits, honey, and possibly bee royal jelly. The presence of human proteins was also noted, which may indicate the addition of breast milk, mucus fluids, or human blood. Emerald Cup. This 17th century emerald cup is a true treasure, carved from a single piece of emerald weighing 252 carats. Such artifacts are extremely rare, as working with such a large stone requires incredible skill. The surface of the cup is decorated with fine inscriptions in Arabic, indicating its origin from the Islamic world, most likely from Persia or India, where the art of stone carving was at the highest level. Back then, emeralds were prized for both their beauty and supposed magical powers, believed to protect against poisons and grant wisdom. Cups made from such stones could only belong to rulers or noble aristocrats and were used on special occasions, emphasizing the status of the owner. Special attention is drawn to the hexagonal shape and smooth edges, which catch the light and make the emerald glow from within. Such items symbolized power and spiritual purity, and today this cup is considered one of the rarest and most valuable artifacts that have preserved the grandeur of past eras. The idol of the Gorbunovsky peat bog. The Gorbunovsky peat bog, located in the Urals, is an outstanding monument of the Paleolithic and Bronze Age, becoming the first archaeological discovery of its kind in Russia. In the place of the modern swamp, there was once a lake, on the shore of which people built platforms, leaving behind dwellings, tools, and vessels. Over time, the area became swampy, but this did not stop people from settling in the territory, as evidenced by the finds of charcoal fragments. Among the unique artifacts found here were a boomerang and a wooden idol, carved from a pine trunk, with an incomparably long body and a detailed head, which makes it different from other finds. This idol, discovered under the wall of the excavation, is now kept in the Museum of Nizhny Tagil. In addition, a head of an idol with primitive workmanship and another idol with a simplified body shape were found, both of which are now in the collection of the State Historical Museum. These artifacts demonstrate special care in the making of everyday objects and accuracy in depicting the shapes of animals and birds. Anthropomorphic images, however, are made roughly and schematically, which may be related to ancient beliefs about depicting the spirits of the dead. It is assumed that because of the fear of connecting a spirit with its image, wooden sculptures were made stylized and deliberately unrealistic. This approach to creating human images indicates the deeply rooted traditions and beliefs of the ancient inhabitants of the Urals. How did England manage to conquer vast India? For centuries, India was a coveted prize for many European powers. The Portuguese, Dutch, and French tried to establish themselves on its lands, but it was Britain that truly became the ruler of the country. In the 18th century, India was a vast territory of 3 million square kilometers, with a population of about 100 million people. For comparison, at that time, England had no more than 10 million people. How did a small island subdue such a powerful country? The answer is simple: the Industrial Revolution, the political fragmentation of India, and the art of British diplomacy, mixed with intrigue and military force. At that time, the Mughal Empire was in decline, and numerous principalities were at odds with each other. Britain skillfully took advantage of this situation through the East India Company. The trading corporation bought or leased land from local princes and built fortified trading posts. Sepoy units were formed there, mercenaries from among the Indians, armed and trained by the British, but commanded exclusively by English officers. When a prince refused to cooperate, the British would stir up internal conflicts. Rival rulers were drawn into wars, and the English acted as arbiters, supporting one of the sides. Then they demanded compensation for their help, land and resources. If a prince couldn't pay, his territories simply came under British control. The numerical superiority of the Indians didn't help. There were never more than 100,000 in the country, and only half of them were military personnel. However, thanks to political intrigue, manipulative diplomacy, and fighting wars by proxy, Britain managed to conquer the entire peninsula. That's how India became the most valuable colony and the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Even centuries later, Britain acts the same way. It foments civil wars to colonize new territories. The Martian guest from Allen Hills, Antarctica, is not only a perfect archive of Earth's history, but also the best collection of extraterrestrial objects on the planet. In 1984, a search team in the Allen Hills area discovered a meteorite weighing almost 2 kilograms. It was given the designation ALH 84001. After 10 years of research, this unremarkable stone sparked the biggest scientific scandal of the century. Analysis of the gas in the sealed glass inclusions inside the meteorite showed that it arrived from Mars about 13,000 years ago, after traveling through space for millions of years. In 1996, a group of NASA scientists led by David McKay published the results of scanning electron microscopy of the stone's inner layers. The images revealed carbonate globules and microscopic structures resembling fossilized bacteria. These formations had a segmented shape similar to terrestrial nanobacteria, but were dozens of times smaller. The publication was so sensational that U.S. President Bill Clinton made a special televised address announcing the possible discovery of traces of extraterrestrial life. Skeptics in the scientific community later put forward alternative theories, claiming that such structures could have arisen as a result of abiotic processes, that is, without the involvement of living organisms. However, supporters of the biological theory point to the presence of magnetite crystals and chains of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons inside the meteorite, which on Earth are usually products of bacterial activity. What's important is that the meteorite itself is estimated to be 4 billion years old, a time when Mars had a dense atmosphere and liquid water on its surface. The discovery at Wallen Hills turned Antarctica into the main laboratory for astrobiology. The continent's icy shell acts like a sterile safe. Meteorites here are not exposed to chemical effects from soil or moisture, so they remain in their original state. ALH 84001 remains the most thoroughly studied object in human history. And although debates about the nature of the Martian worms continue to this day, this rock became the first physical evidence that life could have existed beyond our planet. A spoon that predicts the future. British treasure hunter Rob Middleton discovered a rare artifact, a bronze spoon from ancient times, using a metal detector. The find was made in Patrick, on the Isle of Man. According to archaeologists, it is about 2,000 years old, and it was not used for eating, but for divination. There is a cross-shaped indentation on the spoon, where ancient people would pour a special liquid. Exactly how the ritual was performed is a mystery, but it is believed that each quarter of the cross gave different answers. Similar artifacts have been found in Britain, Ireland, and France. The Middleton spoon was the 28th such spoon in the world. He donated it to the museum. The Golden Tablets of Darius. For the next discovery, we move to the very heart of Persepolis, once the greatest capital in the world. In 1933, archaeologists were excavating the foundations of the Apadana Palace. the main ceremonial hall of King Darius the Great. Under the massive cornerstones, they discovered 2 stone boxes that were sealed so tightly that not a drop of moisture had penetrated them in the last 2,500 years. When the lids were lifted, the researchers froze. Inside each box lay 2 tablets, one made of purest gold, the other of silver. These were the famous tablets of Darius. They were a kind of imperial passport left to posterity. But what is most striking here is not so much the text itself as the incredible craftsmanship. These plates have a perfect square shape with sides of 33 centimeters and a mirror-smooth surface. The cuneiform text is inscribed in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. The depth and clarity of each character are astonishing. It seems that the symbols were not simply hammered and chiseled, but carved with a high-precision tool. The edges of each letter are so sharp that it gives the impression Darius wanted his messages about the borders of the empire, from the lands of the Scythians beyond Sogdiana to the shores of Kush, to be eternal. And he chose metals for this that are resistant to corrosion. The tablets were placed in the foundation of the palace as a magical and legal cornerstone of the state. The fact that the gold and silver have retained their original shine speaks to the highest level of metal purification available to Persian craftsmen of that time. These are not just ingots. This is a demonstration of technological superiority. Darius understood that empires fall and buildings turn to dust. That's why he entrusted his will to the most reliable vault, the depth of the foundation and eternal gold. These artifacts are still considered the standard of ancient calligraphy and metallurgy, proving that the greatness of Persia was literally embedded in every gram of its precious foundation. Another, Stonehenge. In Denmark, archaeologists have discovered a mysterious structure that may be connected to the Bell Beaker culture and resembles British Neolithic monuments. The discovery was made during the construction of a residential area in the city of Aars, located in northeastern Jutland. Initially, researchers found traces of a Bronze Age settlement and the grave of a noble warrior buried with a bronze sword. However, further excavations revealed something even more astonishing: a circular object about 30 meters in diameter, surrounded by 45 wooden posts placed about 2 meters apart from each other. Experts note that this monument is strikingly similar to Woodhenge, an ancient wooden circle located nearly 1,000 kilometers away. The architectural and ritual similarities between these sites suggest a shared worldview among ancient communities. Previously, small wooden circles were discovered on Bornholm, which were considered sun temples, but such a large-scale structure is being studied for the first time. Scientists suggest that the Danish monument might have been used for rituals related to astronomical observations or social ceremonies. It is possible that parallels with the British henges require further research, but it is already clear that ancient European civilizations were more closely connected than previously thought. Crocodile contraception. Egyptian women used crocodile dung as a contraceptive, mixing it with honey and using it as a barrier method. This is not an insult, it's not a folktale, it's a documented medical prescription from the Kahun Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts in history. It was written around 1850 BC. When Egyptologists first read this in the 19th century, there was silence in the hall of the British Scientific Society. Someone laughed, then everyone did. They noted it in Curiosities of Ancient Medicine and forgot it for a century. In the 1960s, American biochemists accidentally returned to this topic. Not because they were looking for it, they were just analyzing the composition of various organic substances and discovered something inconvenient. Crocodile dung has an acidic environment. An acidic environment kills sperm. The method worked. A meeting of the British Scientific Society of the 19th century would have been very quiet at this moment. But that's not all. In the same Kahun Papyrus, several other methods of contraception are described. Tampons made of linen fibers soaked in honey and acacia. When acacia decomposes, it releases lactic acid. Lactic acid is the active component of modern spermicidal gels, the very ones that are sold in pharmacies today. The first synthetic spermicide was created in the 1950s. The Egyptians used a natural equivalent 3,800 years before that. Without chemical laboratories, without microscopes, without any idea about sperm cells at all. Their existence was only discovered in the 17th century. They simply observed, noticed what worked, and recorded it. Official science calls it a random occurrence, an empirical method without a theoretical basis. But wait, the Kahu Papyrus lists not just one or two methods, but more than 10. Different substances, different ways of application, different situations. This is not a random occurrence. This is systematic observation over generations. This is research. It's just research without a name. Imagine a woman in 1850 BC. She comes to the doctor. The doctor opens the papyrus, finds the right section, explains the methods, and she chooses. This isn't savagery. It's a medical consultation. But they really shouldn't have added crocodile dung to the honey. Most likely, it just scared away the nearby rats. But overall, the direction was absolutely correct. The Lady of Bassa. We stay in Spain, but move 6 centuries earlier, the 4th century BC. The Iberian Peninsula. Somewhere in the south near the modern city of Bassa, a woman lies in the ground. Or rather, her image, a limestone sculpture, a little over 1 meter 20 centimeters tall. The woman is sitting on a throne with wings. She is richly dressed. An embroidered cloak, jewelry, and an elaborate hairstyle. Pink paint traces mark her cheeks, and red stripes edge the cloak. 2,400 years in the ground, and the paint has partially survived. This is the Lady of Bassa, one of the most mysterious artifacts of the Iberian Peninsula. But here is what makes her truly strange. When archaeologists unearthed the statue in 1971, they found cremated human remains to its right, not next to it, inside it. There is a niche in the right side of the sculpture, small and neat. That is exactly where the burned bones were placed. The statue was not a monument, not a tombstone. It was an urn, a throne in which the dead woman sat, literally, inside her own statue. Who this woman was is unknown. The Iberians left no written sources that could explain this to us. Given the work's quality, the rich clothing, and the nature of the burial, this was clearly not an ordinary person, a priestess, queen, or a member of the highest nobility. The winged throne adds another layer. In Iberian culture, wings were associated with the transition between worlds. The one who sits on a winged throne is not simply dead, they are already on their way, or have already arrived. It creates an unsettling image. A woman sits calmly with dignity. Her wings are folded, and inside her is herself. Burned, crushed, placed inside stone, the body inside, the ashes inside. 2 versions of the same person in one object. The Iberians came up with a way to preserve a person in 2 states at once, and they did it in such a way that 24 centuries later, we stand before this sculpture and still can't fully understand what exactly we're seeing. Now the Lady of Bassa is kept in the National Archaeological Museum in Madrid, and every year, the same debate flares up around her. Catalonia wants to return her to the place where she was found. Madrid won't give her up. Even in death, she continues to cause conflicts. Some women are like that. The first pharaoh's tomb in 100 years. In 2022, archaeologists made not only incredible discoveries, they found the burial chamber of Thutmose II, the first belonging to an Egyptian pharaoh in a century. He ruled about 3,500 years ago and was the 4th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. The burial site is located in the Valley of the Kings on the west bank of Luxor. That's the same place where the famous tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922. The entrance to the tomb was found in 2022, and archaeologists immediately noticed fragments of vessels with inscriptions that identified Thutmose II, the deceased king. On these vessels, there was also the name of his wife, the great queen Hatshepsut. Soon, scientists discovered that the remains of the pharaoh had been moved to another place, several centuries after the tomb was looted. The tomb is in poor condition because it was flooded shortly after Thutmose II's death. Inside, fragments of blue inscriptions, yellow stars, and parts of religious texts were found, which indicates the importance of rituals associated with burial. Thutmose II was known for suppressing uprisings in Nubia and the Levant. His reign from 1492 to 1479 BC was relatively short. Compared to his ancestors, his tomb was considered less significant. This discovery became an important contribution to the study of ancient Egyptian culture and the reign of Thutmose II. Archaeologists call it one of the most significant archaeological achievements of recent years. Triangular shield. 20 kilometers southeast of eastern Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists excavated a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is an equilateral triangle with sides about 7 meters long. It is dated by coins of Emperor Caracalla, the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The narrow tip of the tower faces the slope. A battering ram or stones would slide along the wall without destroying the masonry. Inside, they found a stone well and remains of a wooden floor, which was rebuilt during the Byzantine period and the Second Bulgarian Empire. Such shapes are only found at the border with watchtowers. The Romans called such borderlines limes, meaning the entire system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the border. In Bulgaria, this is the earliest example of irregular planning. Instead of a standard template, the engineers chose a geometry that better suited the mountainous terrain. Today, the tower is part of the Ervich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders were able to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. The salt mummies of Zanjan. While tunnels and qanats show us engineering ingenuity, the next discovery reveals a frightening and incredibly detailed side of life, deep within Iran. In the Zanjan province at the Cherabad salt mine, time literally stopped thousands of years ago. Here, archaeologists discovered what at first glance seems like a crime scene, but in reality is a unique natural phenomenon. These are the salt mummies, or the salt people of Zanjan. It all started in 1993 when mine workers stumbled upon fragments of a human body. But these were not ordinary bones. Salt, which has powerful preservative properties, completely mummified the remains, preserving soft tissues, skin, hair, and even internal organs in perfect condition. The first discovery shocked scientists. It was the head of a man with long white hair and a beard, and a golden earring still glimmered in his ear. Nearby lay his leather boots and an iron knife. Research showed that this man lived more than 1,700 years ago during the Sasanian era. To date, 6 such mummies have already been discovered, and each one is a frozen moment of tragedy. The salt mines of Cherabad were a place of grueling labor for centuries. Most of these people died instantly as a result of the mine collapse. The salt covered their bodies, drew out all the moisture, and created a sealed cocoon, protecting them from bacteria and decay. The youngest mummy is a teenager, about 16 years old. Thanks to the exceptional preservation, scientists were able to reconstruct his diet, find traces of parasites in his intestines, and even determine his blood type. For us, these findings are important not only as biological material, but also as a direct glimpse into the past. The mummies still have clothing made of cotton and wool, dyed with natural pigments that have not faded over thousands of years. The intricate patterns on the fabrics and the quality of the leather shoes indicate that ancient Iran had a very high level of textile and leather production. The gold jewelry and expensive fabrics found on one of the deceased suggest that not only slaves worked in the mines, but also people of high social status, possibly overseers or owners of the mines. These bodies are a living reminder of the price people paid for the riches hidden in the mountains of Iran. The Cherabad salt mines still contain dozens of unexplored corridors. Who knows how many more such witnesses of history frozen in time this place holds? The underground world of the region becomes a time capsule where the line between life and death is erased in an instant under the weight of collapsing rock. The oldest bridge on the planet, one of the oldest arch bridges still in use, is the Archaeological bridge, located in the Peloponnese between ancient Tiryns and Epidaurus. Built around 1300 BC, it is one of the oldest surviving bridges in the world. The structure was built from limestone boulders using cyclopean masonry, without the use of mortar, but with perfectly fitted stones. It is 22 meters long, 5.6 meters wide, and 4 meters high. At the base, there is a small culvert about a meter wide. The roadway of the bridge is 2.5 meters wide, allowing even a modern car to pass. But originally, the bridge was intended for chariots, traces of which can be seen on the stones. Archaeological is one of 4 Mycenaean bridges preserved along the ancient road. 1 kilometer away is the Petrojafiri Bridge. It is taller, but also still in use today. Another preserved Mycenaean bridge is located in Lykotripa, in the north of Argolis. It was part of another important Bronze Age road. where chariots once raced, leaving behind curbstone guides. These bridges are unique not just for their age, but because they still function after over 3,000 years. Mummies of the Dry Valleys. The McMurdo Dry Valleys cover 30,000 square kilometers of land, where there has been no precipitation for the last 2 million years. It is here that archaeologists and biologists find hundreds of mummified remains of craybeater seals and Weddell seals. The main mystery lies in the location. The bodies of the animals are found as far as 66 kilometers from the nearest open water and at an altitude of more than 1,200 meters above sea level. Radiocarbon analysis of these finds gives a date range from 30 years to 3,000 years. Due to the extreme dryness and the almost complete absence of putrefactive bacteria, the bodies do not decompose but undergo a process of natural preservation. The flesh turns into a hard, parchment-like substance, and the internal organs remain unchanged for centuries. However, official science still cannot explain the mechanism of collective suicide. To reach the place of their death, the pinnipeds had to travel dozens of kilometers over sharp rocks and icy hummocks, moving deep into the lifeless continent where there is no food at all. During research in 1970, it was found that many of the mummies are oriented with their heads in the same direction, towards the interior of the continent. Biologists from Oregon State University recorded that the content of carbon-14 isotope in some samples indicates the so-called reservoir effect. The seal's marine diet can age their tissues by thousands of years, which makes accurate dating extremely difficult. This means that what appear to be 3,000-year-old mummies in the valleys may actually be remains of creatures from much more ancient eras. The presence of so many travelers to nowhere indicates either a major failure in the navigation system or the existence of some factor deep within the dry valleys that has been causing marine animals to leave their territory for certain death for centuries. Charred loaves of bread. These charred loaves of bread were found in Pompeii and Herculaneum, cities destroyed by the eruption of Vesuvius. In 79 AD, thanks to the layer of ash and high temperature, the bread was essentially sealed in time. Not only the shapes have been preserved, but also the characteristic cuts that were made to make it easier to divide into portions. This bread was called panis quadratus, and it was popular among the Romans. Interestingly, some of the loaves even have bakery stamps on them, something like ancient Roman logos. This indicates a developed trade and a system for regulating product quality. In Pompeii, archaeologists found entire bakeries with stone ovens, mills, and even remnants of flour, which allows us to imagine how lively life was in this prosperous city. Finds like these give us a rare opportunity to literally touch the everyday life of ancient Rome, to understand what people ate and what their daily lives looked like. Bread was a staple of the Roman diet, and its survival to this day is a true archaeological miracle. Today, these charred loaves are in museums, reminding us of the ancient world's tragedies and greatness. A unique type of DNA in alien mummies. 3-fingered mummies have been discovered in Peru, claimed to be something from beyond our world. Documentary filmmakers Serena Deasy and Michael Mazzolo say they will present several pieces of evidence for the existence of humanoids. The remains found in a mountain mine, according to the documentary makers, are not fake and contain DNA unlike any known forms. American scientists in Mexico and Peru conducted studies, the results of which refute the claims of the Peruvian authorities that the mummies are just a tourist attraction. According to the filmmakers, the discovery could rewrite human history, becoming comparable to the discovery of the Shroud of Christ or the Ark of the Covenant. The documentary filmmakers are convinced of the need for scientific DNA analysis to understand the origin of the beings, whose age exceeds 1,000 years, and whose DNA is made up of 30% unknown elements, indicating possible genetic manipulation. The film suggests that the mummies could be evidence of a new species or even extraterrestrial origin. The creators plan to show images and research results live from the laboratory, calling for a serious scientific analysis of the discovered remains. Ancient Fortress City. In the Chinese city of Dongguan, Guangdong Province, archaeologists have discovered a fortress city over 600 years old. The discovery sheds light on the defensive systems of the South China Sea during the Ming Dynasty. The excavations revealed massive fortress walls about 100 meters long and 7.6 meters thick, as well as remains of roads, drains, foundations, and wells. The total research area was 3,000 square meters, making the project the largest in the region in recent years. The fortress was the first line of defense for the province against sea invasions. Scientists planned to restore the city's layout and create an archaeological park to better understand the military architecture of that time. Meanwhile, on Mount Helen in the Yinchuan area, archaeologists found an ancient porcelain production center about 1,000 years old. The ceramics found there are surprisingly similar to the products from Jingdezhen, the porcelain capital. This discovery confirms the high level of cultural integration in medieval China. The life of ancient Egyptians. In the daily life of ancient Egyptians, breakfast did not have as extensive a menu as modern meals. Simple but nutritious foods formed the basis: emmer bread, a bit of honey or fig sweets, and possibly a small amount of goat cheese. This meal emphasized practicality and the need to maintain energy for the day ahead. It's important to note that breakfast for the pharaoh and his family could be more varied and rich. It included meat and fruits, highlighting their status and distinction from ordinary citizens. During the feast, Egyptians would display a wooden mummy for everyone to see. This custom served as a reminder of the brevity of life and the importance of enjoying the moment. This tradition was possibly inspired by the belief in the afterlife and the desire to remind guests of the inevitability of death, which made every moment of earthly life even more valuable. The very presence of the mummy at feasts may also have had ritual significance, connecting the living with the world of the dead and ensuring the favor of the gods. Footwear in ancient Egypt was not only a practical item, but also an expression of social status, and even a means of symbolic communication. Sandals of the upper classes could be made from expensive materials and decorated with intricate ornaments, emphasizing their high status. Images of enemies on the soles of sandals symbolize their defeat and subjugation, serving as a reminder of the owner's power and authority. The ancient Egyptians were exceptionally attached to their animals, which is reflected in the art and literature of that time. Cats, dogs, and even more exotic animals such as lions and monkeys were often depicted next to their owners, demonstrating the deep emotional bonds that develop between humans and animals. These animals not only served as companions, but also performed important functions in the household and religious rituals. Cats in Egypt were held in special reverence, being associated with goddesses. Cats were held in special reverence. These animals were considered protectors of the home from evil spirits and pests. Dogs, associated with Anubis, the god of funerary rituals, also held an important place in the lives of the Egyptians. They not only served as loyal companions and helpers in hunting, but also symbolized eternal loyalty and protection. Fashion in ancient Egypt reflected not only social status, but also religious beliefs. Clothing made of fine linen, which allowed people to withstand the hot climate, was complemented by bright jewelry that not only decorated, but also served as amulets. Attention to detail in clothing, jewelry, and makeup indicates a highly developed sense of aesthetics and a belief in the protective magic of these items. Makeup, especially the famous black coal, was used not only to accentuate the eyes, but also as protection from sunlight and evil spirits. Beer was not just a popular drink in ancient Egypt, it played a central role in the economy and social life. Being accessible and nutritious, beer served as the main drink for all social classes. It was even used as a means of payment. Beer production was a carefully regulated process controlled by the state, which highlights its importance not only as a commodity, but also as a vital element in religious and social rituals. Children's hairstyles in ancient Egypt had not only aesthetic, but also symbolic significance. The sidelock of youth, worn by children, was not just a fashionable ornament. It symbolized their age and social status, and also protected them from evil spirits and diseases. This lock was cut off during the coming-of-age ceremony, emphasizing the changes in their social status. Funerary portraits, which appeared in Egypt during the Greco-Roman period, represent a unique combination of Egyptian religious traditions and Greco-Roman artistic techniques. These portraits, depicting the deceased with unusual realism, were meant to preserve their appearance for the afterlife, serving as a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. Lost ancient cities. Archaeologists have discovered ancient cities in the Amazon rainforest, where up to 30,000 people may have lived about 2,000 years ago. This was reported in the journal Science. Using ultrasonic LiDAR, a team led by Stephen Royston from the French National Center for Scientific Research explored the area and found many structures and roads underground. Before the arrival of the Spanish, the Quilamope and Upanu peoples lived here. Royston called this place the Lost Valley of Ancient Cities, emphasizing its uniqueness and importance for understanding the history of the Amazon. The discovered cities, built over a vast area, included residential and public buildings surrounded by agricultural fields with drainage canals. Roads connected the cities, some of which reached up to 20 kilometers in length. Royston notes that the local inhabitants used clay instead of stone for construction. These cities existed from 500 BC to 300-600 AD in parallel with the Roman Empire in Europe, and they lasted for about 1,000 years. Exquisite jewelry and weapons archaeologists in Trento, Italy, discovered a pre-Roman necropolis from the early Iron Age. At a depth of 8 meters beneath the modern streets, more than 200 tombs dating from the 9th to 6th centuries BC were discovered. The necropolis likely belonged to the Aretini, alpine tribes related to the Etruscans. This era coincided with important historical events such as the Olympic Games in 776 BC and the founding of Rome in 753 BC. A distinctive feature of the necropolis was its complex structure. Vertically placed steles marked the western boundary of the stone chambers beneath the burial mounds. Over time, additional burials appeared around them. Rich burial gifts, metal weapons, and jewelry inlaid with mizzentar and glass paste were found in the tombs. These artifacts indicate the high status of the buried individuals and testify to trade connections with other regions of Italy. A cave with a primitive ancient site. In China, researchers have discovered a remarkable object, a giant karst sinkhole, inside of which is a hidden ancient forest unlike anything known so far. This geological phenomenon is located in Leh County. Many similar sinkholes have been found in this area, but the size of this one defies imagination. This sinkhole has a volume of 5 million cubic meters. Its depth is 192 meters. The length is 306 meters. The width is 150 meters. However, the real wonder is hidden inside. After descending to the bottom, a group of speleologists discovered an amazing forest there with ancient trees up to 40 meters tall. These trees are surrounded by dense undergrowth, almost as tall as a person, indicating a unique ecosystem. Experts from the Institute of Karst Geology believe that plants unknown to science may be growing here. This place presents a unique opportunity to study the ancient world and possibly discover new forms of life. The ancient forest in the giant karst sinkhole in China is a real mystery for science. Scientists from all over the world are already prepared to come and conduct research, possibly discovering new species of plants and animals. When the research is completed, this place may be open to tourists, allowing us to personally see this amazing corner of nature. Aztec death whistle. During archaeological excavations in Mexico at the end of the 1990s, parts of Aztec death whistles were discovered, made in the shape of skulls. According to scientists, these whistles were used in rituals dedicated to the god Quetzalcoatl. Modern technologies such as 3D printers have allowed specialists to recreate this unique item. And according to experts, its sound resembles a creepy howl, combining the noise of the wind and the moans of many souls. There are several hypotheses regarding the purpose of this instrument. One version suggests that the whistle helped the souls of the deceased pass into the world of the dead. The second suggests its use as protection against evil spirits in the grave. Finally, the third version sees it as a psychological tool on the battlefield, destroying the enemy's morale. It should be noted that the shape of the whistle reproduces the anatomical structure of the larynx. An interesting point, the terrifying sound is perceived as even scarier when the source is not visible.
Когда кровь становится жидкой.
Naples Cathedral. 3 times a year, the crowd waits for the same thing. The bishop lifts a silver reliquary with 2 sealed ampules, turns them over, and the dark mass inside usually becomes liquid before everyone's eyes. This is the liquefaction of the blood of St. Januarius, the patron saint of the city. The dates are fixed. September 19th, the Day of Remembrance, the first Saturday of May, the transfer of the relics, and December 16th in memory of being saved from the eruption of Vesuvius. If the blood does not liquefy, Neapolitans take it as a worrying sign. In the Chronicles, years when this happened are marked by plague, earthquakes, and financial crises. The holy bishop from Benevento was executed around the year 305 in Pozzuoli. According to legend, a Christian woman collected his blood in vessels. In the Middle Ages, the relics ended up in Naples. In the chapel of San Gennaro, 2 ampules are kept, a large one with a brown substance and a smaller one that is almost empty. They cannot be opened, so direct chemical analysis is impossible. The Church describes the phenomenon but does not provide an official scientific explanation. Scientists believe this is thixotropy. Some gels become fluid when shaken or heated, and thicken again when left to stand. Chemists have demonstrated laboratory samples of blood-like mixtures based on iron-containing compounds, iron oxides, and gelatin proteins. With gentle warming from the palms and movement, they turn from a gel into a liquid. Other practical explanations include the cathedral's temperature, the reliquary's constant rotation, and natural aging. The ampule's composition is still unknown. There is no analysis. It's impossible to directly test any hypothesis. Why does this work for believers? The ritual takes place in front of everyone. The priest lifts the ampules at the altar and tilts them. The dark mass begins to flow down the glass and becomes lighter. The audience can see the process even from the back rows. For Neapolitans, this is not a chemical corpse, but a sign of the city's protection. The sensible compromise looks like this. Scientists suggest possible mechanisms, and the Church gives it meaning. Tradition upholds community trust. A pot with coins in the fireplace. This remarkable discovery has certainly become a real breakthrough in the study of Scottish history, and in particular the history of the MacDonald clan. The coins not only served as a means of payment in that era, but were also a symbol of wealth and status for their owner. Researchers cannot say with certainty that the treasure belonged to Alistair Ruad MacLean MacDonald, but a large amount of evidence suggests this. The tragic story of the massacre of Glencoe is one of the darkest periods in the history of Scotland, and these coins may be one of the last pieces of evidence of that terrible tragedy. The treasure found in the summer house speaks to the importance and status of its owners. The remains of expensive ceramics and other luxury items testify to the high social status and prosperity of the inhabitants of this house. These artifacts present a unique opportunity to glimpse the everyday life of the nobility of that time, allowing researchers to understand how clan leaders and their closest circle lived and what they did. The oldest find is the remains of a Roman basilica built around the year 80 AD in the very center of modern London. The discovery was made at 85 Gracechurch Street on the site of ancient Londinium, a settlement founded in 43 AD as a trading center. The excavations revealed the foundations of the basilica, which served legal and administrative functions. Nearby, they found the remains of the forum, the main market, and place for public gatherings. The walls of the basilica were built from Kentish limestone and formed a structure about 40 by 20 by 12 meters in size. The basilica stood for about 20 years, after which it was replaced by a larger complex, one of the grandest north of the Alps. The Book of the Dead and the royal burials of Tuna el Gebel. In the past, it was the cemetery of Kmun, or Hermopolis Magna, and is the most significant Greco-Roman necropolis in Egypt. Its history dates back to the New Kingdom and continues up to the Roman era. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities has announced the recent discovery of a new cemetery from the New Kingdom era in Tuna el Gebel. Under the leadership of Dr. Mustafa Waziri, a team of archaeologists has shed light on the mysteries of this amazing site. They discovered numerous tombs carved into the rock with stone and wooden sarcophagi. The main findings include funerary amulets, precious stones, gold artifacts, and ushabti, statuettes depicting influential officials, including Jehutimes, who was responsible for the bulls of the Temple of Ammon, and Nani, a singer of Ammon. The artifacts reflect the status and beliefs of the New Kingdom elite. An interesting find was a papyrus about 1,315 meters long, associated with the Book of the Dead, an ancient Egyptian funerary text. This document includes magical spells intended to help the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. 19 ancient tombs. In Buduli, in southern Italy, archaeologists discovered 19 ancient tombs dating back to the late 4th century BC. The discovery was made after authorities uncovered illegal construction work in the area. Various artifacts were found in the tombs, shedding light on the cultural and historical heritage of the Campania region. Most of the burials are done in the A Cappuccina style, with roofs and walls made of ceramic tiles arranged in a gable shape. In some graves, the remains of the deceased rested in pits marked by large stones at the head. The burial inventory included black glazed ceramic vessels and vases depicting women, probably made by craftsmen from Lucania. A particular point of interest was a grave with a silver coin from Taranto, dated to between 380 and 325 BC. The coin depicts Athena and Heracles, indicating the region's connections with the Greek world. A slab was also found with a rough engraving of a horseman ready to throw a spear. This drawing likely indicates the high status of the deceased and his military background. The mummy of Hannah Beswick. The fear of being buried alive is not just myths and legends. Taphophobia, or the fear of premature burial, troubled the minds of many famous people such as Chopin and Gogol. However, the story of Hannah Beswick, an 18th century resident of Failsworth, is particularly striking. Hannah was shaken by the incident with her brother John, who narrowly escaped being buried alive. He was found in a cataleptic state during his own funeral. This incident had such an impact on Hannah. She took unusual measures to protect herself from a similar fate. She turned to Dr. Charles White to make sure she was truly dead before burial. Dr. White, known for his interest in pathological anatomy, made the unusual decision to embalm Hannah's body. He removed all the internal organs and replaced them with a preserving mixture. In this way, he ensured that Hannah would not come back to life in the coffin. However, after Hannah's death in 1758, her body was not buried. Rumor had it that Dr. White used the money left for the funeral for his own purposes. Hannah's body was kept for a long time in an unusual container, the case of a large wall clock, and later it was transferred to the Manchester Museum of Natural History. Only after more than 100 years had passed since her death, in 1868, Hannah Bestwick was officially declared dead and buried in the Manchester Cemetery. Interestingly, after she was buried, many claimed to have seen her ghost, but it never harmed anyone. The Red Princess of the Silk Road. Archaeologists first discovered the remains of a woman with teeth stained with cinnabar, a rare and toxic mineral. This unique discovery was made at the Shenzingdian Cemetery in Turfan, in northwest China, and dates back to between 2200 and 2050 BCE. Researchers nicknamed her the Red Princess of the Silk Road. Cinnabar, which contains mercury sulfides, is known for its poisonous properties. However, in ancient times, this bright red mineral was used in rituals and ceremonies. Analysis showed that the pigment was applied using a binder made from animal protein, which makes the discovery even more unusual. It is noteworthy that there were no cinnabar mines in the vicinity. This leads scientists to believe that the mineral was brought from other regions through the trade networks of the Silk Road. At that time, Turfan was an important hub connecting China and the West. The color red played a significant role in local shamanic practices and symbolized immortality. People believed the soul could reside in teeth, so coloring them may have been a ritual to communicate with spirits or guard against evil. I hope you enjoyed the video and liked it. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Goodbye, everyone.